and welcome. I wanted to go through today some statistics that are mind-blowing. These are on stress and burnout. And the statistics about stress and burnout in corporate reveal there's a persuasive issue that affects not only individual employees, but also the overall productivity of everyone at work. Burnout. Nearly 8 in 10 employees experience burnout on the job, at least sometimes, with, the past things such as the pandemic exasperating the situation. Productivity. Burnout cost companies $322 billion annually in lost productivity. And let's not forget about the healthcare costs associated with those, reaching 190 billion. If anybody's looked at if you've got your employee healthcare programs and you've seen the increases in your cost, that is that the stress and the mental health of your employees your companies are paying for that in the healthcare cost, and they're just outrageous. The impact on work-life balance is the rise of remote work has introduced new dynamics, but it's not totally alleviated burnout for many employees. And 78% of American companies have set up or are planning to offer mental health resources to their employees. These statistics underscore the need for employees to really prioritize employee well-being and provide support to combat the challenges of stress and burnout. And today's presentation is called GForce Leadership. And I am passionate about this topic because there is a way to remedy the situation. And I want to talk to you today about how to stay conscious, calm, and connected under pressure. Now, if you think about, I want you to imagine an aircraft is sitting in a fighter pilot and you're launching off into an aircraft carrier. And as soon as you're looking at the runway, and as soon as you hit go, the amount of acceleration and force you're going to feel is going to just take over. And if you think about all the disruptions as leaders that we have, the disruptions, the fast changing innovations in technology and AI and all the other things that are changing the workplace dynamics, the pressure that we all have to perform. I was talking to one of my friends, it's a sales leader, and he said, I not only have pressure to get the team to perform, but it's almost like baking a cake, where executives and people who haven't baked the cake are constantly coming in every 5 minutes to talk to you and see what's going on because the pressure is so high. And the acceleration of expectations for people in their positions has increased with the demands for higher performance. And so I like to call GForce Leadership, this concept that I want to talk to you about, where I'm going to give you 3 takeaways, is due to the rapid acceleration and the pressure that we're under. And if you think about a fighter pilot, or you watch that Maverick movie with Tom Cruise and you saw him going up to 10G, the pressure and the acceleration speed that you go, especially as you're growing. Some of you out there are in high growth medical technology industries where business is booming, and you're feeling a lot of growth pressure. Others of you are sitting in a situation maybe where you have to adapt and do some reorganization to kind of recalibrate to all these changes that are happening. So the difference between what the airplane pilot is feeling is physical, and what he has to go through to maintain his composure, versus what you have to go through as a leader, is mental and emotional. Now, if you think about what are we going to talk about today, I want to talk about being a conscious leader. And conscious leadership really is understanding that how you stabilize when everything else around you is speeding up. That's the game you're playing now. It's about how well you as a leader can take that mental and that emotional acceleration and pressure and stabilize through it. And that's what we're going to talk about in today's power webinar, profit plan webinar. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Rhonda Petit. I have been in the medical sales technology arena for the last 4 decades. Very passionate about sales, love the science, and really want to, my mission is to help support leaders to learn how to start leveraging disruption as an advantage, and really being able to use that to adapt, to attract, inspire, and retain top talent so that they can create a workplace and a sustainable business over time. And so, what I want to talk to you today about, my promises and the deliverables about what you're going to learn today, are really the three phases of leading in this GForce environment that we're in today, and how you're going to use that to start leveraging disruption as an advantage instead of having it level you. Now, the first thing that we've got to recognize in any fighter plane, the first part of the trip, really, if you're going to be able to do these maneuvers, is you have to learn about breaking free from gravity. So what do I mean by breaking free from gravity? The thing that you want to understand is that teams will never evolve without purposeful tension. I'll say that again. Teams will never evolve without purposeful tension. And you, as a leader, are being called to be the catalyst for that purposeful tension. A lot of times, what happens, especially in growth, when growth is going so fast, that we can fall into the comfort zones, the things that, old habits that we've been doing, where we're doing a lot of motion, but we're not really making progress. We're really not leveraging the potential that can come from a purposeful tension. And so if you're a leader and you're just running around just trying to keep everything together, and you're not really focused on how you're going to leverage that greater potential that exists in these high disruption, pressure, acceleration environments, you may have unchallenged assumptions. You may be letting your team off, just telling them to get things done so you can get it off the list. But that's a danger that you don't want to fall into. So what I want to talk about is how you can start to break free from the gravity zone and really start tapping into your team's potential, and making sure that they're not confusing motion with progress, and not, you're not challenging, maybe you need to be challenging some of the assumptions that they're making as you're on your growth curve. So if you think about what is it that a leader can do to really overcome inertia, there's really three things, and I'm going to explain this even in more detail here as to the why behind it. But people, when they have purpose, when I said purposeful tension earlier, when they understand that there's a greater mission as a leader uh, to behind what they're doing, then they tend to become very creative on how they can pull together as a team and really accomplish something extraordinary. So one of the biggest things that, if we're gonna activate intrinsic motivation within teams, is that we always want to give purposeful meaning to what we're doing, the why to what we're doing, and we need to be talking about that as leaders on a regular basis. We need to give the team autonomy to get their job done, and we need to put purposeful tension on raising standards so that they can become masters of what they do, because the more that they develop capability from getting in the uncomfortable zone, which is where potential lives, what happens is, in the beginning of that initial state of purposeful tension, you're going to need courage. You as a leader are going to need courage to put the purposeful tension in place, but it will pay huge dividends for you. You're going to also have to feel uncomfortable. The reason they call courage and not confidence is because it feels uncomfortable. But when you have courage and you make a committed decision that you're going to do the mission that you set out to, and to all the veterans out there today, Happy Veterans Day. You guys demonstrate leadership, and we in the corporate world really can learn a lot from what you're doing, because you accept your mission. So when you get your team around a purposeful mission and a meaning behind what they're doing, and then you share a vision of where you're going and why you're going in that direction, so that they understand the vision and they can see their dreams inside your vision, then you're going to get buy-in, and you've got to have an intention for the people that you're serving to be of service to them. You've got to understand that people never resist change. What they do resist is transitions when they don't understand how they're going to benefit from them. So if we're not being over communicative, if you're in growth about why you need to take the standards up to the next level, or if you're in maybe restructuring, and explaining to people you want to respect the dignity, give your employees dignity and respect by helping them understand and taking their questions so they understand where you're going, why you're doing it, and the ultimate mission behind it all. And when you get in that zone of really being a servant leader for your team, you're going to overcome the inertia. But one of the things that you want to know is that, when you do that, you basically want to have them understand that we're not doing something chaotic or just off the cuff, that we're trying to do a course correction. And as a leader, it's very, very important that we all understand the resistance and the human dynamics that's going to happen, and expect it and plan for it in our leadership agenda. So what do I mean by that? The discomfort zone that every human being on the planet is going through, that causes all the issues, all the people that feel that they've got burned in corporate. The reason is because leadership was missing some key issues when those decisions were happening. And a lot of it dwells around communication and how people deal with a shock. When people have a shock to their system, and I'm sure, you can think back to any time that you saw maybe a disruption hit you that you never saw coming. And you have to agree that I'm sure you felt some sort of shock. And you can think about like what kind of questions you had, that started going in your head. When people do not have that purpose and that vision and that open communication to take their questions and go with them, their imaginations will run crazy. And the problem that we've been dealing with that's causing all this stress and burnout that I talked about in the beginning is fear. When fear is how you're managing people, and you're managing from protection instead of purpose, you're going down a dangerous alley that's going to cause the stress and the burnout of your people. And this change curve is something that all of leaders, I believe, should really study and learn to understand the important inflection points of what you need to be doing along that transition period, because it's not the transition that people don't like. It's when they don't understand what is going on. Thurman Arnold said, confused is a man who has no words to describe what's going on. You do not want that in your organization and on your team, because what you're being called to do as a leader is to help people rise more into purpose and bring out more potential. But you've got to understand that the human brain is wired around protection. And immediately when things are changing, people want to go revert to that Maslow's hierarchy of needs and go to safety, and go into groupthink and say we just want to stay or keep it the way it is because that's safe for them. And so you as a leader need to be the catalyst that's going to help people lead them to cross the new chasm that you've got in front of you. So if you think about it, the shock that happens, what happens when people get shocked is their imagination sometimes goes crazy. And if you're not managing that imagination, people are always thinking from a thought. And if that imagination grows like a crazy vine, people will come up with all kinds of crazy things that are not even true. And then you're going to have, risk things like retention, lowering engagement, etc., that's going to cause a big mess. It doesn't have to be that way. If you set that vision, that purpose, and that intention, and you have the interactive dialogue to take people's questions, you're going to be able to manage change a lot better. Now, the problem most people have, and why you have retention and stuff, you have sometimes fear and protection up in the leadership. And if fear and protection is causing everything, what happens is people go down here and they get depressed and they leave. And the true successful teams are the people that have great leadership that understand this curve and they can get people through the dip and into the acceptance phase and recognizing that maybe something is lost, that's gone, it's not coming back, but this new thing is going to provide all kinds of potential. And you've got to help people in their imagination see that. So resistance is something, if you're going to get yourself out of inertia and your team out of inertia, you have to expect and you want to learn how to manage that. Now, the question I have for you for step one for your practical exercise today is, where are you tolerating 1G leadership right now? Where are you not challenging assumptions? Where are you not raising standards? Where are you not communicating maybe enough to your people so that they truly understand what's going on? Even if you have to make hard decisions with your business, the greatest managers, the greatest leaders, the greatest CEOs will sit a company down and say, hey, this is the situation we're in. This is the amount of revenue that we need to, pay the bills, do whatever. I want to keep the company alive. I'm going to have to make some cuts, some difficult choices, but this is why we're doing it, and this is why we have to do it. And supporting them to recognize that they have strengths, and if they're no longer needed in this organization, you have goodwill to help them make a transition into their next move, whatever that may be, with as much guidance as you can provide them before they have to go. So, sometimes this toleration of 1G leadership, if it was addressed earlier, may not have led to that fact that you had to maybe lay people off if we keep them engaged. So our jobs as leaders is really to, to be able to adapt ourselves, become the leader, that people are going to follow, and people are going to follow a calm, not a chaotic leader, and really start challenging people to step up their game. All right. So when you do that and you dealt with you prepared for the resistance, you're over communicating, and now you've got people understanding that there's purposeful tension and there's a reason behind it and they're bought in. Now what happens is you're off the ground and you've got to endure sustained G-force. And again, this is not, and when this happens, you've got to stop asking. Most of us ask the question, I've been guilty of this many times, when something happens like that and the pressure's really high, you say, why is it happening to me? But the better question that I want to ask you as a leader today to ask yourself is, what is this calling me to become? Because what most often these disruptions are signals that an old story that you've been leading from is now either not relevant, or it's coming out of something of who you're not. And this is really a wake-up call, these disruptions and this acceleration for you to become who the world needs you to become for a future leader now. And so when we think about enduring sustained G-force, just like a pilot would have an anti-G maneuver, we as leaders need an anti-G maneuver. So that's what I want to share with you, because today, so the first thing we had to talk about was getting the plane off the ground, and leaving the 1G gravity. But now that we've got it up in the air, and we're going to go through some sustained G-force for quite a while, we have to know what those anti G maneuvers are. Because when acceleration increases, so the pressure multiplies. And I know that many of you out there are feeling that right now. So if you think about what is the first reaction that we usually do, is we all think we want to control. So the tendency, the normal human behavior, human dynamics is when stuff starts happening like that, people try to go and use control. But what we have to realize, just like the anti-G maneuvers that the pilots study, is that trying to control something at that speed is an illusion. What we really want to do is we want to work on expanding our capacity to stay present. So what do I mean by that? calm leaders are present. They're with you. They're with you right now in this moment, just like I'm here with you in this moment. And it's your capacity that you increase, just like what the fighter pilots will do is they have breathing exercises and muscle exercises they do to kind of soften their gaze so that they can really see and hold on in those high G forces. So, what are some of the anti-G maneuvers we can take that are maybe not as strictly physical, but more mental and emotional? And so, the first one I would say is resilience, building your resilience. Now, resilience really, if you think about it, has five capabilities. And I always like to remember it by Harry. Harry has uh, apples by the pool. So Harry has the two H's. The thing that we want to have is you want to have some hope, right? So hope is belief in the future, belief that we're going to get through this, belief that we've gotten through things before. So when you carry hope and you have that optimistic hope that you can bring to your team, and they can feel that, they can go through some discomfort by that, but that's part of the resistance. Humor is the greatest thing to incorporate into your team when you see anything that you can get joyful about or wonder about, because what it does is it releases endorphins and lessens the tension of the people that you're around. So if you've got people that are gifted with humor, if you're gifted with humor as a leader, that's a really good quality to be able to instill at times when you're trying to build your capacity to stay present in acceleration. Um, then you've got acceptance. Sometimes what we have to lead others by showing that we accept what's happening. And acceptance means, that you got to realize that you're either going to accept it and it's going to it is what it is, and it's either going to control you or you will control it by accepting it. And so what most people do is if you accept something, what you learn to do is you have to say, okay, you're learning how to get them up out of that dip. And you have to learn to say, okay, that stuff is over. I can cry about the spilled milk all day long. That's not going to change the situation. What can I do with what I have? And I seek the good, and you start accepting to move forward, to harvest the good and let the rest go. Then you and forgive what you have to forgive, and let go. You're on your way. Perspective is huge. The way people are seeing things, they're and controlling that imagination so it doesn't get off, is a big part of resilience. So humor, hope, acceptance, uh, and belonging is the last part of it. When especially in a team, if you're going to build resilience in your team, they have to feel belonging. They have to feel that they can trust one another. They have to feel that you believe in them. There's nothing greater that you can give to a direct report than actually believing in them, trusting them to do the job. So when you build those five core skills of resilience, you're going to have a greater capacity to stay present. Another thing that people usually don't like to do is reflection, but reflection is extremely important. I had a situation once where I'm driving my car, I fell into a hole. 2 weeks later, I was driving up to New England and I'm slip sliding away. And I had no idea, because I had no time, because I didn't want to think about reflection or looking into anything, that I had a problem. And 2 weeks later, I had total bald tires and suspension damage that almost gave me a blowout that could have cost my life on the highway. It's things like that when we don't pay attention to the signs, and we don't do any reflection, that we lose our capacity to stay present, and it can put us on a road to burnout or a blowout. So reflection is something that you want to take time for, because again, the game today is not about the speed, you getting to speed. It's about your capacity to stay present in the moment with your team and then make the best decisions that you can to move the business forward. And then the last part of it is energy awareness. And what I say by energy awareness is you've got to understand that all of us as human beings have stress triggers. And if you've never heard that before, I'm going to tell you there are things that stress people out. And every one of us has different stress triggers. And it's one of the reasons why all of my clients, when I'm coaching, I have them go through something called the Energy Leadership Assessment, because it's an attitudinal assessment that tells you where you are in the present. And attitude is something that you can have something happen to you that can shock you or whatever, and it can send your attitude down the drain. And when your attitude goes south and you can't see your triggers or recognize that you've gone south, you can get yourself into a lot of problems that cause that burnout and all that stress, the health issues that it's causing to people from a mental and emotional state. So energy awareness and knowing what your stress triggers are a very big part of how you're going to build capacity to stay present. So I would think of these things, kind of as the gym, the leadership gym, a place where you go to build these muscles to increase your capacity to stay calm and cool under pressure. So, if the leadership assessment will help you understand how you can become a better leader, how you can reach your goals with ease, because you actually, when you understand what your stress triggers are and how you show up when you're under stress and not under stress, and you can see the difference, you can start making other choices, and you're not going to go on automatic reaction mode and autopilot. And it's a phenomenal tool for the whole team, to be honest, on how you can get higher engagement at work, and not feel so stressed out because you can see your energy patterns. So the question I'd ask you now is, what G forces have been pressing on you? How much have you been feeling the G forces of pressure to perform? How much pressure have you been feeling about compressing time to get things done faster? How much fatigue have you had from all the constant change? I'll talk to people and they say, my gosh, I went through, 3 or 4 managers in the last year or something like that. Or they go through multiple reps that they hire, and then those reps leave or whatever, and they have to do a lot of training. And that's just a lot of fatigue and stress that does not have to be there if you're really coming at it from a proactive standpoint of this GForce leadership and recognizing that your jobs are, you're going to have to be the catalyst that's going to get everybody out of inertia. You've got number 2, then you've got to sustain your ability to sustain the G-force is through capacity building, not through trying to do things with speed or, work harder and that kind of thing. It's not that at all. It's expansion of you. It's the expansion of your consciousness. And that's why this is called conscious leadership. This G-force leadership is about greater and greater consciousness, because when you can expand your consciousness and sit in a place where there's space and have some sort of relaxation in knowing what you're doing and using those anti-G maneuvers, then you will sustain those pressures with ease. So what are the leadership anti-G maneuvers that you want to get into a daily routine around? One is, the first idea I want you to think about and decide if you want to accept it, and I highly encourage you to consider it, is that recovery, even in a physical workout, is part of the process. And so if you don't have a routine around your self-care, you need to structure one. You need to structure something that's going to give you that ability to recover. And if you don't have that recovery time, you will burn out. And you don't want to be part of the statistics of what I was reading about with mental health issues and everything else, or physical issues that happen to your body because you have so much cortisol. Our bodies are supposed to be maintained in homeostasis, and we need to have cortisol for when we need to run from the dinosaur, but we shouldn't be 70 or 80% of the time in a state of high cortisol, because it just totally destroys your body. So if you don't have a self-care ritual, you want to do that. That could be things like meditation. It can be, going to the gym on a regular basis. It can be taking walks in nature. It could be gardening. It could be whatever. There's Reiki. There's all kinds of different things that you can do for recovery. You have to find what your secret sauce is and what gets you centered back to center. The second thing I would say is anti-G is you've got to ask yourself on a daily basis, am I leading from pressure or presence? I'll say that again. Have I been leading from pressure or presence? Many times when fear is running the show in the organization or in the culture, you can be the catalyst to stop that by the way that you're showing up. But the good question to ask is, have you been leading by pressure or presence? Because leading by pressure is transactional leadership. It's the old model of the industrial age when they treated um, human beings like donkeys and said, well, it's either the carrot or the stick, and you just assume that a creature is going to behave according to how it gets disciplined. Human beings don't work that way. You do not unleash potential from human beings by a carrot and a stick. Human beings are creators, they're not creatures, and they have extreme amounts of potential within them. In fact, they say that we only use about 5 or 6% of our total human capacity and our potential. So you as a leader have the ability to, and in today's age, if you don't learn how to do this, you're going to be left behind, because people, all the new hires, the millennials and the Gen Zs, they all want a coach. They don't want a director. You look at somebody like, Bill Belichick, and, he can't, the guy worked in years ago, but he doesn't seem to relate to the young people very well, because I don't think he's learned about the fact that you don't treat people like creatures. You have to be a coach. You want to look at them and believe in them and see the potential, and ask that, get them to bring that to the surface. And then the third thing is, with your energy levels and learning what your stress triggers are, you can start to respond more, adapt easier, and not react, because you can recognize your stress triggers. And if you realize that you have a stress trigger and you know what it is, and it's just going to deplete the crap out of all the energy you have in your inside, you can make a conscious choice, because this is called conscious leadership, this G leadership, to have a different choice that you're going to make, so that you can reserve more of that energy that you're going to need to maintain through this acceleration phase. So we talked about the first two stages, and we gave you two questions to ask yourself. One is, where have you been settling for 1G leadership and not doing the challenge to get out of inertia? And two is, where have you been feeling the G forces, and have you been practicing any of the anti-G maneuvers? And if you haven't, then I'm going to provide you an invitation so that you can do some of that and get started today, because your health and your success depends upon it. And the last part in this month of November is, how do you stabilize as you expand? Because the second maneuver, the anti-G, is designed so that we can start expanding our capacity instead of trying to control, so that we can handle more. But then how do you stabilize after you've expanded? And so phase 3 of GForce Leadership is really comes down to three key components. And those three components I want to talk about a little bit. They are grace, purpose, and presence. Now, what do I mean by grace? Grace is when you can realize accept the fact that you are a human being, accept the fact that you may have missed the mark, and be able to forgive yourself and lead with humility. Lead with the humility, knowing that you're not going to be perfect. It's not about a performance and an act where you have to be perfect and you have to put on this facade in front of everybody. In fact, most leaders, the greatest leaders, are very vulnerable, and they have the ability to say, hey, I made an error, I made a mistake. and they move forward and they don't get caught up in carrying around guilt for extended periods of time because they're not forgiving themselves for that. You have to realize that we're all human. No one on the planet is going to be perfect. Because we've got this this human creature stuff in us that, we do make mistakes, but the great leaders are the ones that can forgive themselves and keep moving on and lead forward in humility, not from a status, but from service, always going back to think about what's my mission calling me to do right now, and how can I be of greater service to the team that I'm here to support. And when you get into that mode of grace, where you're not beating yourself up and where you're going to provide yourself grace, people can feel that you'll give them grace too, and it makes for much more a stable environment to grow a company and grow a team in. Purpose. Gratitude, the gratitude part of the second thing, gratitude, is that gratitude ties you back to purpose, because gratitude happens when you look for the good and you remember the why behind what you're doing, the mission. All of us in the science arena all got into science because we love the science, and we love the possibility of improving the human condition. We still do today. And that's why medical innovations are going so fast and furious. It's a fun ride. It's accelerating ride. But as our innovation speeds up and comes out with things, we have to keep our leadership, reinvention going on, and bring to the workforce a better leader that can really help these companies survive and sustain their performance over time. So when you get into the gratitude mode, you're not looking at what's missing and getting your myopic vision so blocked that all you think about is what's wrong. You're really focused on what's right. And when people see that, and you're starting to leverage what's right instead of what's missing, you're now in an abundance mindset as opposed to a scarcity mindset. The fear's not going to be going crazy. The imagination, instead of being used to destroy things, is going to now be used to create solutions. And that's when you're really tapping into your potential and power. And then the last part of it is the calmness. Whatever it takes for you in your self-care to get yourself in a state of being present with your people and calm is a huge benefit for expanding your capacity and stabilizing your team so that you can have the retention you want and you can have high engagement, because people will always follow a calm leader. So the next exercise, the last part for the third thing for you today on this 45-minute webinar, is I want to ask you to name one challenge that you're having right now and why you're grateful for it. And if you think about that challenge, and instead of asking the question, why is this happening to me, you ask, what is this situation calling me in to become, so that I can step into the leader that my future now requires. And if you can go find the answer to that question, I promise you're going to start feeling fulfillment, and it's going to help you get stabilized. So in summary, what we talked about today, this GForce leadership, is that we want to stay centered. A conscious leader is conscious under all the pressure. And we talked about the 3 steps to really build those leadership muscles. We talked about breaking the gravity in the inertia, and we had the fact that we as a leader need to be the catalyst. We have to expect the resistance, but we have to understand the change curve, and provide all of our direct reports and employees and coworkers the dignity and respect to be empathetic with what's going on, and be conscious of doing the things that alleviate the crazy imagination, fear stuff that can happen when people do not know what's going on. We talked about how to withstand acceleration, that when acceleration goes up, control is an illusion. It's not about control. It's about how do we expand our capacity. And we talked about the things that you can do as a leader in terms of your resilience building and your self-care. And then we talked about how to stabilize it all so that we can land the plane and, take another flight when we have to go again by staying in a state of grace, grace because we want to give ourselves grace and forgive ourselves if we make errors, and keep our humility intact to lead with humility. We talked about gratitude and the power of gratitude because it really connects you to your source energy and your purpose and reminds you why you're here and what you're being called to do as a leader. And lastly, the importance of presence, being present in the moment. Presence in the now is where your power is. And when you connect into that, instead of thinking forward or thinking in the past all the time, and you're actually present with your team, you will see an unbelievable change in the way things happen, in the amount of creativity that you can start bringing to the surface to solve even more problems. So I want to invite you today to consider that if some of this stuff is not, things that you have done, that today you turn a new leaf and you decide that you want to go after becoming and leaving a legacy of GForce leadership, where you, as part of your legacy in the arena. And by that I mean, joining me to start rising with purpose and presence in your team. And what I want you to invite you to do is I have two things. One is a free download that you can get on my website. It's called Leadership Stress is Costing You More Than You Think. And it'll give you an overview of what we talked about today, and some key information on an assessment that I can do for you that will give you a full report on what your stress triggers are. And the beauty of that assessment is, even if you've taken it before and for some reason you've gotten off track, it'll tell you exactly what happened in terms of that attitude and perspective, and where you can start turning that around into opportunity and getting your magnetism aligned. So if that's something of interest to you, I want you to go right now to rhondapetite.com. Right on the front page, there is a download button where you can get the article. And at the bottom of the page, you can request a call or to take the energy leadership assessment. It's a $249 investment, and you get with it a coaching call to really go through the debrief with you, so you understand and walk away with understanding how you show up energetically when you're under pressure and in those high acceleration modes, and how you normally show up. And with that knowledge, you'll be able to monitor more of your energy levels and make different choices that'll increase your engagement, increase your ease of flow, increase your capacity, and also increase the ability and the influence that you're going to have on others, because you're going to start showing up differently than you do if you're in a situation now and you're showing up by reacting to the stress. So it's very powerful. So do it now. Go to rhondapetite.com. And I want to thank you very much for joining me today. I hope this was beneficial, and I look forward to seeing you back for the December webinar for the final part of the year. Have a great day.